Oh! I didn't see you there. I was catching myself 40 winks. Are you here for the wee tale? Oh, that's good. I've got a good one for you tonight. It's called Tales from the Outer World. This is a small one called the Fairy Shilling. Just beyond the Malin crossroads, up into the glen, there was a man living one time, and his name was Paddy. He was a decent, honest man. He was well known in the countryside for his goodness to his neighbours. Paddy had never married and lived alone in a little tiny cottage well up in the glen, where he farmed a bit of land. One evening he had some business in Mallinmore and was coming home by way of the crossroads. It was late in the evening and the day was darkening down. Crossroads were dangerous places after nightfall, for ghosts and fairies sometimes hung about them, waiting for prey on lonely travellers. As he approached Malin Cross, his heart nearly failed him, for there was someone, or something, there. A shadow moved in the gloom, just where the roads crossed, and as he drew nearer, Paddy saw that it was a small woman in dark clothes, her head wrapped in a shawl. She was sitting by the very edge of the road, and close beside her was a large wicker basket. As he drew level with her, Paddy wished her a good night and made to go on. But to the sound of his voice, she lifted her basket and fell into step beside him, walking into the Malin Glen. As they walked, Paddy, being a civil man, tried to make conversation with his strange companion. But she never answered him a word. "Give me your basket," he said, "and I'll carry it a piece for you." She gave him the basket, and to his surprise he found that it was light as a feather and he could carry it quite easily. They walked on in silence, with the moon now coming out from behind the clouds and flooding the countryside with a pale light. Now that she got rid of the basket, the woman stepped out fairly quickly, and Paddy almost had to run to keep up with her. At length they came to the end of the lane which ran up into the glen, past Paddy's house. He turned to the woman, meaning to hand back her basket. "I'll have to leave you here," he said. "I'm going on up into the Malin Glen. I'll give you back your basket." The woman, however, never slowed her step, but spoke to him for the first time. "Hold on to it," she answered, "for I'm going up into the glen myself. I'm lodging with Jimmy Jack, who lives up there. I have business in these parts with Jimmy Jack. Jimmy Jack has agreed to give me a bed for the night." Now this astonished Paddy. Jimmy Jack was his neighbour and lived a little way above him, at the very head of the glen. The two men were good friends, and Jimmy Jack would never mention that he had anyone coming to stay with him, least of all a woman. All the same, Paddy carried the woman's basket further into the Malin Glen. Soon they reached Paddy's own gateway, and this is where he set the basket down. "I'll have to leave you here," he said, "for this is my home." She reached into the pocket of her apron. "Are you a drinking man?" she asked him. "Well," said Paddy, "when I'm in a pub or shebeen, I can take a pint of stout or a sup of whiskey as well as the next man." The woman reached him an old shilling, which somehow still sparkled in the moonlight. "This is for your trouble," she said. "When you are in a pub, have a drink and think of me." And with that she lifted her basket and walked into the Malin Glen towards Jimmy Jack's house. For a long time Paddy stood there, looking at the old coin in the palm of his hand. He'd never seen a shilling before like it. It was certainly very old, for it was worn round the edges. There seemed to be an inscription there, but he couldn't read it because it was badly worn away with use. And yet it seemed to glow with some sort of inner brilliance that reflected the moonlight around it. At last, he slid the coin into his pocket and went indoors. That night, Paddy couldn't sleep, nor could he even settle in bed. The strange woman kept invading his thoughts. Who was she? What was her business in the Malin Glen, and why hadn't Jimmy Jebb mentioned her to him? It was all very mysterious. Laying in his bed, he made up his mind to go and see his neighbour the following morning and see him and ask him about his curious guest. Jimmy Jack was out sweeping his yard the next morning when Paddy called up to see him. He asked Jimmy straight away about the visitor of the night before. "Damn your eyes," said Jimmy Jack. "There's no woman here, and no woman called up with me last night. I was in the house on my own, and I went to bed." The two men looked at each other. It was growing stranger by the minute. Paddy was worried that the woman he had helped with her basket might be a fairy. The thought frightened him a little, but he put it to the back of his mind and tried to get on with everyday life. He had a message to do at the post office in Malin, and when he was there he thought, he bought a twist of tobacco for his pipe. As he paid for it over the counter, he reached into his pocket and brought out the old shilling that the strange woman had given him. He used this to pay for the tobacco, receiving a handful of change in return. On the way home, however, he had occasion to put his hand into his pocket again and count his change. To his astonishment, there in the middle of was the old shilling with the odd worn writing around the edges that he couldn't read. The late afternoon sun caught it, making it glow with eerie light. It was the same coin that he'd used in the post office. Of that he was sure. And if it had somehow returned to him, it was a magic coin. Maybe something to do with the fairies. And that was the way of it. Every time Paddy was in a shop or in a pub or a shebeen and he used the old coin, it would return magically to his pocket. It would bring change off it. It would bring change of it with it. Soon Paddy's pockets were jingling, but the thought of it gave him no peace. Paddy O'Gar was a religious man who never missed Mass of a Sunday, and the thought of having some fairy thing about him unsettled him. At times the thought of putting an old coin into the church poor box, but he somehow couldn't bring himself to do it. Who knows what may happen, he told himself. And anyway, he never wanted for anything as long as he had the fairy shilling coin about him. It was a tempting thing. He thought about using it to wager or to buy grand things that he couldn't normally afford. And he knew that the coin was existing some kind of a spell over him, luring him away from righteousness. He had been a simple man before, but now he had grand ideas, and it was all the work of the fairies. In the end, his conscience got the better of him. This was certainly a fairy thing, and had been simply put in his way to lead him into the paths of wickedness and to damn his own soul. He decided to take it to the priest in Malin and tell him the tale. When he heard about it, the priest took the story extremely seriously. "Let me see the coin," he said. And Paddy brought it out and laid it onto the priest's hand. And once the holy man dropped it. It is as though it was hot coal, fresh from the fire. It lay on the table between the two of them. Paddy gazed at the other, for he could handle the old coin with no hurt, but obviously the priest, being a holy man, could not. "This is without doubt a fairy thing," said the priest solemnly, "and something that has been forged in the fires of hell to waylay the godly. It must be exorcised." And he went into his robing room and put on his religious vestments and stole and came back with the Bible. Opening the holy word, he instructed Paddy to lay the coin on its pages. Then he said a few words in Latin and made the sign of the cross over it, and the coin faded away like a drop of rainwater, as though it had never existed at all. Paddy O'Gara had a lucky escape, sure enough, for who knows the depths of wickedness that the old coin might have led him into. The priest instructed him to attend Mass every day for a month to ensure that there was no further fairy taint about him, and he was glad to do so. And that night, when he walked up from Mallinmore, he always felt a bit of a chill as he approached Mallincross, for perhaps the fairy woman might be waiting there. But if she was, he never saw her again. But he had a very lucky escape, all right, don't you think? Until next time, boys and girls, happy Halloween. Stay safe. Watch out for the fairies.